outside of the U.S. How do you look to kind of bridge the gap in the wake of coronavirus? I think sports betting becomes kind of low-hanging fruit for these states' legislators to bring in additional tax revenue. So I think we're really kind of just getting started. When we look at the total opportunity here, we're talking about, for the U.S. market only, in upwards of 20 to 30 billion in terms of total addressable market for sports betting. So we really are, pardon the pun, in the early innings here.
Yeah, so, and where's the money? Is the real money in the live betting? Like I'm gonna bet that somebody's going to make a touchdown in the next 10 minutes on a football game, or is it in the online casino business, just playing blackjack online? Where do you think the bulk of the money is going to be?
Yeah, so, it's interesting. We've seen this evolution from daily fantasy sports to now sports betting. I think you're hitting it on the head. Online casino is really going to be the big moneymaker for these players, with sports books kind of being the kind of customer acquisition and kind of the top of funnel for these players. When you think about running a game of blackjack, it's much higher margin. It's much more predictable revenues. I mean, look at the game last night. Who could have seen that coming, right? And you have to manage for that as a sports book. You mentioned live betting as well. I mean, technology is going to advance to the point where we're not even talking about the next 10 minutes. We're talking about whether the next pitch is a curve or a fastball. I think that's going to unlock real monetization opportunities when the technology gets to the point that we can see that rolled out en masse.
So Dave, we're all gonna be participating in online gambling operations. We're all going to be buying pot shares, and we're all going to be investing in Bitcoin, and that's how we're going to balance all the state budgets. Is that what's going to happen here? I mean, he's painting a pretty rosy picture.
I think that there is actually a fair amount of truth to that. I mean, certainly legalization of cannabis, a big part of that has been this push for tax revenue at the state level and at the local level. And I think we're going to see the same thing, frankly, in anything that we have previously regulated out as a quote unquote sin activity like gambling. I think this is really inevitable. Certainly, in this COVID environment where we're all still fairly trapped, it makes a ton of sense for us to move some of these activities that historically have been sort of vacation activities to the home. I mean, I live in Massachusetts. We have a handful of casinos that have opened up here, but I think most of those folks would really just rather be able to do that at home as opposed to, say, driving to Springfield or to a reservation in order to be able to play a hand of blackjack. So I think it's a bit inevitable, and I think the tax story is real.
Is it real, Jeff? I mean, I'm not asking a policy question. I know you're in the trading business, but let me just ask you in terms of these ETFs. I've watched this ETF of his, BETZ, just gather a tremendous amount of assets. It was one of the big thematic hits of the year, sports gaming. Your firm does a lot of trading around the ETF space itself. How do you feel about sports gaming as a thematic idea? And just give us some thoughts on 2021 and what will be hot thematic themes, ideas.
Well, Bob, no, it's a great question. In 2021, I get excited about themes. And let's just rewind to 2008, 2009, post-crisis. If you were just long the S&P 500 utilizing SPY, things were fine. But what changed in 2020? Obviously, we had a pandemic. So that pandemic has made a lot of not just financial advisors, not just investors, but the whole globe really rethink their exposure in these themes, specific gambling, betting, if it's pot, whatever the actual theme is. People are trying to be more thoughtful, not just on their themes, but also their sector exposure. So we run a lot of ETF model portfolios, actually powered by NASDAQ Dorsey, right? And we're always looking for sector tilting. We're always trying to drill down and produce alpha somewhere by being different. And I think that's the thematic component. So you're seeing great ETFs like BETZ. There's a lot of different ETFs coming to market that are going to allow people to really slice and approach. And, the same way you're seeing some of the active investors in the GameStops as well as the AMC, they're looking for ideas. They're looking for conviction. They may be wrong, Bob, on the actual theme for that quarter or for that year, but nonetheless, they want to have the ability to have conviction. And that's what gets so exciting about the ETF space, and that's why I think it continues to see growth in 2021, specifically in thematic ETFs.
Yeah. I really like thematic ETF concepts because it's easy for the investing public to understand. It's easy to understand. I want to own solar.
100%.
I want to own,
100%.
Environmental, social, governance. I want to, own whatever. People think thematically. I don't have to. When I say thematic, I don't even have to explain to people. I mean, people like to think in categories. It's a more specific way of looking at it than the old GIC structure or the S&P subsectors, but it's thematic, and it makes a lot of sense. It's one of the great things about the ETF business, that they can pick up on thematics very quickly and turn them into an ETF. How many times have we seen that? Speaking of thematics, Jeff, it's time to discuss the Bitcoin ETF, the ageless, endless Bitcoin ETF story. You're a partner in Valkyrie. Not to be cynical about it, but hey, I mean, how many years have Dave and I sitting here been debating the Bitcoin ETF? We're going into retirement debating the Bitcoin ETF at this point. So you've got one. You're with Valkyrie. Do one thing here. Just break this down. Number one, why would this be a good year for Bitcoin finally to have an ETF? Is there something about the SEC now under this administration that will make them more amenable where they weren't in the past? Is there something about the quality or state of Bitcoin that has changed that would make the SEC more amenable? And Jeff, you know very clearly the SEC has cited many specific instances why they don't want it, including custody issues, including the ability to control prices, because a lot of it's set overseas in what they consider questionable markets. So give us an overview here. What suddenly do you think has changed that would cause the SEC to approve a Bitcoin ETF?
Well, Bob, a similar approach to the way I strategically asked my wife to marry me. You know, around the 15th or 20th time I asked, she finally said yes. But all kidding aside, I think the Bitcoin ETF, and why I'm optimistic for 2021, it just gets exciting because here we are. I know we're celebrating the S&P 500 today, making a new all-time high above 3,900, but we're also celebrating Bitcoin as it nearly kissed 45,000. So as we see all this confluence of exciting data, I think we go back to why did the SEC say no for all these years? And yes, we did file Valkyrie Funds. It's a team of seasoned industry veterans led by our CEO, Leah Wall. But we have the ability and the confidence that we're seeing a change of guard at the SEC with Mr. Clayton leaving. But nonetheless, I think the maturity of the product, and that maturity of Bitcoin is actually being confirmed today with Ethereum futures being traded at the CME Group. So an additional crypto created in the futures market. But I go back to why is it going to happen in 2021, Bob? I think it's the fact that the SEC has been patiently watching, and they're really trying to make sure that trading in markets, that's the division of the SEC that has to get comfortable before any review of any filing, no matter how many filings of ETFs are out there. But once trading markets get more comfortable with the actual concept of just Bitcoin and crypto in general, I think that makes sense. And the active and passive investors, they're trying to find a solution, a remedy to own Bitcoin. Trying not to forget their passcodes and their digital wallets. They're trying to find a more secure way of holding those cryptocurrencies. You take that and add on the fact that we're seeing a lot of companies like Tesla in the news today owning Bitcoin, or go back to last fall when we saw PayPal announce the fact that they're going to let 350 million of their users transact in Bitcoin or crypto. I think this is all coming together here in 2021. And more importantly, why we think we're different at Valkyrie, why we think we have confidence in our ETF. Of course, price is going to be a big piece of it, Bob, but also it's the expertise in trading markets, trading futures, and that should be assistive in adjusting the historical slippage or the historical premium to NAV and some of the other products. And the SEC is watching that component, that premium to NAV. And I think if they can offer a solution via an ETF, regulate it, and it can trade more accurately to the actual spot price of Bitcoin, that's the win-win solution for all active and passive investors, even the hodlers.
Jeff, you are a great salesman for your Bitcoin ETF, I have to say. But Dave, seriously, maturity? Is that really a reason the SEC is going to approve a Bitcoin ETF? And now that Elon Musk is endorsing it, we all know about that wonderful relationship he has with the SEC. I mean, if that doesn't get him over the goal line, I don't know what will, for crying out loud. Go ahead, Dave.
I think,
enlighten us.
Maturity definitely does matter. And that is effectively what the SEC has said in rejecting or asking filings to be pulled, that these markets are not yet ready to be the target of ETF investors. Now, I think that is changing. I think Gensler coming at the SEC, between him and Peirce, they really understand crypto, and that's got to be a good sign. I'm maybe not quite as Pollyanna about it. I think maybe we're still looking at 22, but I do think it's inevitable, and I think we're starting to make that progress towards a sort of fully liquid, fully exchange-traded crypto vehicle of some sort, whether it shows up in a traditional ETF or not. I think the success we've seen of things like BITW and GBTC, which are not ETFs, they are pink sheet traded companies that happen to own cryptocurrencies under the hood. I think that is really going to force the SEC's hand. When we have companies like Tesla making Bitcoin a major balance sheet asset, and we have companies for whom that is their whole balance sheet asset trading on the pink sheets, I think it's going to get hard for them to say no for very much longer.
You really think so? I mean, I keep going back to the reasons they said no in the past. There was custody problems. They weren't sure of the security of custody, and the fact that the prices were still largely set overseas by markets they couldn't control. I think I'm trying to think like a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, but how do you cure those defects? It seems like a tough one. I know the SEC. I was pretty close to the SEC the last administration. They were terrified that 5 or 6 years from now, they were going to get hauled in front of Congress and said, are you the guys who approved Granny buying the Bitcoin ETF, which was at $4,000 and is now at $400? I know they were really worried about the incredible volatility of that.
I think they were at a bit of a turning point there, because I think the SEC has to do something. And one thing they can do is approve these products and put them in a structure that we all understand. The other thing they could do, which I don't think anybody wants, nor do I think is predicting, is they could come down very hard against crypto and about this whole space, and start banning some of the access vehicles that we do have. I don't think that that's going to happen, but I don't think they can stand here on the head of the pin forever. And so I think we're going to see some structures that allow Bitcoin to show up, or any crypto to show up in a regulated product. We may not like some of the conditions, but I do think it's going to happen.
Jeff, last word on this one before I move on?
No, I think you see more of a sensationalized. You're not giving enough credit to what happens at the CME Group, Bob. The CME Group launching another cryptocurrency futures. I think that is a huge win for a Bitcoin ETF being approved in 2021.
Yeah, for my 2 cents on this, I'm waiting for a tethered coin. I think blockchain is the revolutionary technology here. I would love to see a tethered coin, a U.S. dollar tethered coin, a euro tethered coin. That will revolutionize trading. I'll be able to send money to my friends in London. I'll be able to move things around really quickly, and I think that will take away some of the intense interest in Bitcoin as a source of payment. That's my 2 cents.
You can send money to your friend in Chicago, Bob, anytime you want.
Yeah. Isn't it outrageous to you that it still takes 3 days to send, $100 to London? And J.P. Morgan still controls all that? And 6 banks essentially control all that? It makes me furious. That's why blockchain will solve all that. Blockchain will solve the real estate problem. Blockchain could even help solve the clearing problem that we had. Yeah. We all know that. That's why it's blockchain you want to promote, folks, not Bitcoin. Sorry. Editorial. Stop, Bob. Okay. Before we go, can I just point out to our friends over at the NASDAQ, today is the 50th anniversary of the NASDAQ. It started 50 years ago, February 8th, 1971. NASDAQ began operations for the very first time. And it was originally, Dave, you'll remember this because you were 4 at the time, or 3, that it was originally a quotation system. You couldn't trade on NASDAQ. All it was a screen. That's right, quotation. That's right. It is originally it was just a screen you could stare at, but that was revolutionary. You couldn't trade; you could just stare at it. But it was revolutionary because these stocks were traded over the counter and, of course, by the phone, and you could drive a truck through the bid and ask. And one of the things that this did was it helped to lower the bid-ask spread because everyone could see the prices on the screen. Now, it wasn't until 1998, actually, that it became the first stock market to actually trade online. We were able to do that and actually do the trading, but it was quite a revolution for the over-the-counter guys to get together and put together NASDAQ 50 years ago. And, of course, you can buy it now through ETFs. Fidelity has a composite NASDAQ composite index tracking. ONEQ is the symbol. And, of course, you know about the QQQs and the QQQ Juniors that were launched just last year. And, Dave, they're still out there, still trying to innovate and do all sorts of new things here. But this goes to show you, 50 years ago, this was considered a crazy idea. Like, who wants to look at stock prices on a computer? You call your broker if you want to make a trade.
And now they're pushing the front end of innovation. Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, that's the point here, which is why I think your point about maturity, even though I have problems with Bitcoin, is correct. You've got to be you've got to be able to keep pushing financial innovation forward. And just remember, in 1971, it was revolutionary to stare at a stock price on a computer screen. You didn't even trade it. It was just revolutionary to look at it. And now look where we are. So remember that, folks. That's the key point. That does it. Enough pontificating. For this week's ETF Edge, thanks to Dave, Will, and Jeff. Stay tuned for our ETF Edge podcast, by the way. Dave's going to pontificate again for a few minutes because I'm going to pick his brain on a couple of other things. Remember, you can catch all of our videos, etfedge.cnbc.com. Thanks for joining us.
Get the ABCs of ETFs with the ETF Edge newsletter, your weekly update on the hottest trends in the nearly $4 trillion market of exchange-traded funds, expert analysis, actionable ideas, and exclusive insight from host Bob Pisani. Sign up now at cnbc.com/ETF Edge newsletter.
Oh, in a window? Oh, cool. Great. Is Dave there? You there, Dave?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
How you doing? Okay. Yeah, I can. Thanks. Were you 3 in 1970?
I was 4 in 1970.